Hello, and welcome to the Weird Waves podcast. My name is Taylor, and this is episode 40. On this week's podcast, it's a bit of a strange one. No, just kidding. It's not a strange one. I posted on Instagram today, but I literally woke up this morning and I forgot what day it was. Shockingly, or maybe unshockingly, it's 420. So, happy holidays to you, my friends. This episode is a conversation that I had with Dr. Talia. She was kind of interviewing me for this episode. It's really cool. We talk about hair. We talk about how I got to start surfing, how I started the podcast. I was going to post this as a bonus episode, but I decided to release it today because we didn't have a regular guest for this week. I think because of everything going on, just kind of been out of touch a little bit and fell off the bandwagon. So I really hope that you guys enjoy this episode. I think it's a really great interview. I'm biased, obviously. It's about myself. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. And if you have anybody that you would like to have on the podcast, please let us know. And here is episode 40. You can just talk. I mean, yeah, so whatever you want to ask me, let's just go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, let's go. Okay. So, oh yeah, you've got coffee. That's smart. My coffee is down. Oh, it's a keep cup too.
Yes. You know, I have this, I always tell this story about a keep cup because so when I was living in New Zealand, I was obviously like a backpacker. I was broke, and I remember saving up to buy a keep cup. It was like 30 or 35 New Zealand dollars.
Ooh.
And it seemed like a huge like amount. Because I was just this like kind of bum surfer chick, whatever. And then when I was coming back to the States, I like sold it. I sold my keep cup, and because I needed the extra money and whatever. And then last year I was at a hair conference in New York, and I walked into this coffee shop, and I saw that they had like a keep cup, and I just had this like really crazy moment because I was just able to just buy it and not even think about it. And I was like, it was a really like, it was a weird moment. I can say that success wise or like financial comfort wise, that's one of the biggest moments for me. It's such a strange moment, but that was like so huge for me. So then actually that one, I don't know what happened to, but then I got this one, and then we have another one from Surf the Greats. It was like the same thing. I was like, oh, we have to get you one for Andre, and it was such a like awesome experience.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you're like, I know I've made it when I can just drop $30 on a travel mug and not
100%.
think about it twice. Totally.
Exactly. Yeah, it was such a weird, like, you know, I was there with like this girl who I had just met in the class, and we were at like some, you know, lunch break or whatever. And here I am like almost tearing up, and she's kind of looking at me like, what the heck? I'm like, sorry, it just like, let me just have this moment for 2 seconds, and then I'll be, you know, chill again.
Yeah, it's like you have it on your vision board 5 years ago. You're like, when I make it,
yeah,
get myself a keep cup. I actually still have that right now. I'm like, oh, I really want a keep cup, but you know, there's a coffee shop that sells. If you buy a kilo of their beans, which are really great beans, I think you get $10 off the keep cup.
Ooh. Oh, I lost you there for a second.
Oh,
there you go. Okay.
So how did you? So you lived in New Zealand. When did you live there for? When was the time?
So yeah, I guess we'll call it I don't know, an existential crisis or a midlife crisis or whatever. I dropped out of school, broke up with my boyfriend, and ended up taking the first like au pair job that I could, and went to New Zealand. And originally it was not like it definitely wasn't a permanent plan. It was very like spur of the moment type of thing, and I was planning on the whole time like going back to school afterwards. And I just fell in love with surfing there. I went there originally like as a nanny. And then like 2 months into my trip, there was first I went to this place called Raglan, which I talk about in probably every single podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I went there for this protest, and I just remember looking at the ocean and just being in the ocean for like hours, just not surfing, just being there.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back as like they set up these like excursions for nannies. It was through this nannying company, and they kind of help you get set up there. And it was like a 2-hour surf lesson with all these like nannies, and it was a whole beach day. And so I was so bad at surfing, first of all. And because I was really overweight, like I was really in a bad place before I left the country, and I was really heavy. Like I think right now, pounds wise, I'm about 155. Then I was probably like I was pushing 210. Like I was really, it was very unhealthy. And so I kind of like found this thing with surfing that like I was so bad at it, and it took me such a long time to catch on, but it kind of became this like motivator in my life to keep me healthy. And
Mm.
so so that's kind of how that started. And then yeah, the first family that I nannied for, they were really awful. And it just got into it. Like I feel like anybody who's lived or worked overseas,
Mm-hmm.
you do kind of get taken advantage of, because you don't know the rules, you don't know like the working laws, especially if you're like 20 like me.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't want to, like I don't care, I just want to, like I don't want to call my parents for money. And so I was really like, when I kind of found out I was getting taken advantage of, I quit, and I was going to move to this other town. And then this lady didn't pay me. She was like, I'm not paying you, basically,
Mm.
almost $1,500. I had
Mm.
no money. And so I saw this posting for a nanny job in Raglan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I
Uh-huh.
just like spent my last, it's like one of those stories. Like I had $100. I spent $20 on the hostel, $20 on gas for the interview. And I show up to this interview, and I'm like, I can do literally anything. I barely even read it. And they hired me on the spot. They just checked my references, and then I ended up staying with that family for like 2 years. And the dad was a surfer, and he was so good. And he gave me like a wetsuit and a board, and like,
Cool.
and yeah. So I was in New Zealand just under 3 years. I was there for like 2.5, 3 years. So yeah.
And would you surf every day? What was it like once you started surfing? You were like, I suck at this. And then you started connecting with this dad who gave you pointers and inspired you to to get out
Yes.
there.
Yeah. So I mean, I was surfing almost every day. So what, like my schedule was like these two 12-hour shifts, and then every like one weekend a month was like my nannying priorities or whatever. So if I wasn't working, I had all this free time.
Mm.
And so yeah, I surfed like so much, and I got really I kind of like, I would say that I played myself a little bit, because my friends were all so good. Like so good.
It's
And
always
I
good to serve with people better than you, though, don't you find? You
totally,
know,
yes,
pushes you.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, totally. That is a great thing. But what I kind of ended up doing is I got so good at like getting out the back and learning how to paddle and learning how to duck dive, that I couldn't actually, like I was able to handle myself in waves that I couldn't actually surf.
Oh yeah.
So like I could get out, I could be with my friends, and then I'm taking a wave and I'm just getting absolutely pummeled. Like because I kind of like skipped, like I didn't go through this like small, then
Mm.
medium, then big waves. I was just like, I was a
Mhm.
charger. I was just like, I want to go where my friends are going.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
How long did it take you to start making it on those waves?
I would say that I kind of had, so in the podcast I talk about like the big scare moment. So I
Mhm.
had my big scare moment, and that was when it kind of like humbled me in this way that it made me like chill out, kind of reassess my skills, I would say, and reassess like what type of waves do I want to ride.
Mm.
So I kind of went back to basics a little bit. And then from there, so all in all, I probably wasted, I mean, not, I don't know, who knows if I wasted them or whatever, but it took me a good 6 months really to kind of like be realistic about my skill. I think that it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain it. I think if I look back at myself during that time, I was really trying to figure out who I was, and I was kind of like using surfing as that tool. So I tried a bunch of boards. Like I had so many boards. I love buying them. And I had all the cute like booty like wetsuits and looking so cute and all this stuff.
Like if I nail my rash guard, then I'm
Exactly.
gonna nail my surfing skills.
Right, which is just it's just bullshit. Like that is just so, it's just fake. But you have to kind of get over that. I think definitely guys go through it too. It's definitely not just a female thing. I think that's part of it. But now it's like, I don't really want to show my ass to everybody when I'm surfing. Like that's not the point, It's like so but yeah, so I was surfing super super consistently, like very consistently, and I was surfing really good waves with like I can't think of a more perfect conditions than the conditions I was surfing in. Like there were days where there was like a 16 to 18 second period. Like I can't even believe that existed, but it did, and it was just it was so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the wave height? Like how big were they generally?
Oh, I mean, anywhere from, it was never flat. There's a very famous like waterman, Daniel, I think his name's Daniel Cariopa. I'll have to look it up. I can't. DK is his like nickname, and he has a whole like brand around him. And he is born and raised in this town, and said he's only seen it flat once in his whole life.
Whoa, crazy.
So yeah, so it could hold 30-foot wave. It could hold, a 2-foot wave or whatever. So it was really like
something. Yeah.
There was always something and something for everybody. So yeah, it was really like just a water person's playground. Yeah.
Amazing.
So,
and yeah, you were able to get out there consistently, and your job kind of allowed you to have that time. You were inspired.
totally.
That's cool.
Yeah,
How
and
much did you to feel like, hey, I'm surfing?
Really?
I don't know if I'm at that stage.
Well, I really don't know. Like, I think that I definitely started to take myself seriously too soon. So I think probably after the first year was when I kind of, I got my own ego in check. I had a couple like situations with locals and like people kind of being like, Taylor, you shouldn't get out of here. I remember one guy being like, Taylor, like, better, like you shouldn't be out here today, like, and then it kind of started after a year. That kind of started happening less and less. I stopped putting myself into those kind of like weird situations, but I also, I started focusing more on like surfing as this thing that I want to get good at. So after a year roughly of living there, I was surfing a lot and I was super active, but I was also partying a lot. I was really partying a lot. I had a lot of fun. It was a great time. No, whatever. But after that, I moved into this house. It was like outside of the town of Raglan. It was like this house on a hill, and I went super like hippie granola. I had like a composting toilet, a rain shower. I lived in like a camper van with no like power. I had to go in the main house to have like power. There was no Wi-Fi. It was very like removed from everything.
Cool.
And so I was doing lots of yoga. I was able to surf, and like if I was surfing, it was a 20-minute drive. So I was surfing. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just 5 minutes and I'm going to surf for half an hour. It really became this like long extended thing.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, like you're gearing up, you're going out, it's gonna be a few hours.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yeah, so maybe I guess in the long answer is like after a year was
Mm-hmm.
when I kind of felt like, okay.
Mm-hmm. That's what people are saying. I asked a guy in Costa Rica. I was like pointed at some girl. I'm like, how long till I can do that? He's like, a year of daily surfing. I was like,
Yes.
okay. So
Yeah,
let's take
especially
that.
right. And like another big thing is that like I wasn't healthy. Like I didn't have like I was learning how to surf, but I was also getting strong.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, I was just so unhealthy before. I had no balance. I had no, my body couldn't do anything because I was just eating garbage and treating it like shit. So it was like a year of me progressing in surfing. And then after even changing more of my diet and stuff like that, then I could really like get into it more intensely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What happened? Like, what was that health journey like? 'Cause I'm in the health place, so I'm curious. How did that shift?
Yeah, so I would say before, especially before New Zealand, like I was eating just like shockingly bad, just like shockingly bad, just like any processed food, takeout type of thing. I was smoking a lot of pot. I was very like binging and stuff, but it was, now that I look back, it was because I was very unhappy with myself.
Mm,
And I just think it was kind of like it just kind of gets into this like ball, it gets worse,
mm,
then you just like you feel bad, so then you eat more or
mhm,
whatever. So then kind of moving to New Zealand instantly, I was living in a house with somebody who doesn't eat like I eat.
mm,
So I was, they weren't really, I mean, to a point they would buy extra things for me, but it was like very it was just a different way of eating. So that was kind of how it started, I would say. It just kind of like became, eating out in New Zealand, it was very expensive, takeaways and stuff. It adds up really
mm,
quickly. Where here and probably in Canada too, it's pretty cheap. Like it's
mhm,
pretty reasonable in terms of that. So that
mm,
was the start. And then I remember probably I would say after like the year after I like left the first family and then moved, like I was already losing weight just by not eating like total garbage, like just from naturally like not eating, like my calorie consumption I'm sure was cut in half like in a very short amount of time. I was
mm,
also like kind of working out in a gym and I was just like changing my habits.
mm, mhm,
And then especially my like that first and into the second year in New Zealand, I remember I was really taking surfing seriously and I met this guy, it was this Brazilian guy, and like I could usually surf for like 2 or 3 hours at a time. And then I was like done, I
mhm,
was just totally done. And I remember this guy was there when I got in and I got out, had like some food, had some water, and then went back in. And like he was still out there, and it was very clear that he was not taking any breaks. And I
right.
was like, I paddled over to him and I'm like, dude, like, what are you doing that I'm not doing? And like, of course, this guy was pretty like muscular, but it wasn't anything absurd.
Right.
So I'm like, what are you doing that I'm not doing? And he's like, oh, well, like I eat this like paleo kind of lifestyle. And I'm like, okay,
Mm.
interesting. So we kind of talked, in the parking lot afterwards. But I mean, this guy must have been out there for like almost 6 full hours. Like seriously, it was
Yeah.
such a long time. And um, so that was kind of the beginning, is I
Mm,
started doing that. So I started like cutting out bread, cutting out dairy,
mm,
um, cutting out most like just gluten, like pasta,
mm.
rices, stuff like that.
Like those kind of starches. Yeah,
Yeah,
starchy
yep,
flours. Mm-hmm.
yep. And I started feeling so good, like seriously.
Mm-hmm.
just instantly. And I would still like cheat here and there. But then when I came back to the States, I got so sick. Like I got really, really sick. And I also got really, really depressed because what I ended up doing with my timing is that I did 2 winters in a row.
Okay, yeah.
So I basically went almost all the way through New Zealand winter and got home at the end of October just in time to do American winter. And I was kind of like what we were talking about. Like I definitely wasn't getting enough vitamin D. So I went from like so much vitamin D for 2 years straight, like all the time, to like nothing. I couldn't surf. And then the food, like I just like different things tasted so drastically different. Like just for example, milk. Like I used to drink well because New Zealand's milk, it's so good. Like it's so fresh. It's either not homogenized or not pasteurized. I'm not totally sure which one that is.
What's pasture raised? Like, are there cattle?
Yeah, it's all pasture raised, but it's also like so our milk here, it's pasteurized and homogenized. I think in New Zealand it's only homogenized or something. It's like one of those two. It kind of like skips this other cleansing process. And I came home and I used to drink so much milk and it just tasted like water. That was the first thing. I'm just like, because there's no fat in it. There's nothing. There's nothing in it. And the other thing was chicken. I just remember trying chicken and it literally tasted like pee to me. And I was like, how is this even like, and I still really don't like, I still can't get over that chicken, whatever that is.
Yeah, I ate some chicken in San Diego in August. I remember just being like, it tastes like grill.
Yeah.
That's all. There's no like grill rubber, you know? Yeah.
It was this kind of bizarre. It was very bizarre. And so I ended up getting like this weird like not eczema, but like just this weird like my skin was freaking out. Like my whole body went through this very like weird. I didn't gain weight. I wasn't like, you know, I don't know, unhealthy, but I felt this like really intense, you know, I could tell that like eating food, it was like an issue for me. And so I was living with my parents and we ended up finding like farmers markets, you know, my parents live out in the country, so we started getting like farm fresh eggs. We got like free range chickens, which were better, you know, just little small things like that. But it was something that like I had never had to do before, and like my parents never did that either. So because of me getting sick, they kind of realized like all of these things. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, and yeah.
Sometimes it becomes the impetus when you start to know like your health shifts enough that you notice a difference, and then it inspires you to get healthy, and that prevents all kinds of stuff down the road. It's kind of sometimes a blessing in disguise, although it's hard to frame it that way when you're in it.
Totally, but it definitely kind of hyper-focused things. And it's a really easy way to realize a lot of things really fast, you know?
Totally, yeah.
I wasn't, in New Zealand, the food is so good that even if you're not buying organic, it's like pretty close to organic. You know what I'm saying? Like their standards for organic food, it's so higher than ours in America. It's just like such a high standard that, you know, buying organic food here, unless you're actually getting it from the farm, like if you're going to the store and buying organic veggies or whatever, it's kind of not even as good as New Zealand's like regular products that aren't labeled organic.
Right.
So, I was really spoiled over there for sure. So I had to make some major adjustments. Yeah.
It's hard. I think I have this experience. I always tell everyone I was in Chicago at a conference a few years ago, and I went out with a group of friends to eat that deep dish pizza, the big cheesy pizza. I normally don't eat dairy and gluten, but I was like, when in Rome. We ordered a medium between 4 people, and the waitress was like, "Are you sure that's really small?" Well, no, we're just going to have a little slice, like a tiny kind of sliver of it, and a salad. The next day, it was like being hit by a truck. I don't know what was in the day. Like, it was incredible. It felt like I was hungover. I felt nauseous. I was trying to vomit. It was awful. And I was completely non-functional that day. I was trying to sit in these lectures and I was like, I feel like garbage. So I just have that memory being like, I don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
but it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have that similar experience. Like a lot of Europeans will move to the States and just kind of eat what they're used to eating. Or the opposite happens. Someone moves to Europe and they're like, I can eat pasta, I can eat cheese, I can eat those Italian meat salads, and I feel okay. But somehow in North America, what we're doing to our food is kind of alarming.
It is alarming. It's so bizarre. And yeah, I mean, I found that, so I call that experience that you had a bread hangover. That's what I've called it since like that time. And I also have times where I'm like, I try stuff out. I'm like, oh, maybe I can just try this or try that or whatever. But sourdough bread for me has always been fine.
Okay.
Now I've reintroduced that sometimes. But yeah, as far as chicken, I mean, I just, and I don't drink milk at all anymore. I'm fine with cheeses. Most cheese, I just get like Aldi. They have really cool like farmers types of cheeses, goat cheeses, different things like that. That's kind of what I'm eating now. So yeah.
Yeah, like one thing you guys have is the grass-fed butter and grass-fed cheese, which I don't know, I'm getting more of it, but it's not that easy to find here in Canada. Like we have a pretty strong dairy lobby that prevents us from accessing US cheese and like different kinds of cheese. So
that's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah. Because people be like, "You're going to the States, grab me some Kerrygold."
It's funny because it's from Ireland.
Yeah, I know. American cheese or butter.
Oh man, yeah. That's so funny.
You came back to the States after living in New Zealand, and then did you get into Great Lakes surfing right away, or what was that process like?
No, so it's a very weird process. So I actually, like, when I was in New Zealand, I started this company. It was never official, but I was like repairing wetsuits. I came up with this newer way to repair wetsuits. So when I've always been kind of handsy, like handsy is a bad word actually. I've been like a trades person, but never like officially anything. I kind of grew up sewing and making stuff with hammers and like just kind of doing stuff like that. So my plan, in quotes, because I never fully have a plan, but the idea of a plan that I had was to stay in the States until June for my brother's graduation and then go to Australia. So I was not even thinking about staying anywhere near the States at all. I did not want anything to do with it. I ended up working in this car shop at my parents' house for probably about 5 months, doing the interiors of cars for like custom classic cars. So sewing, it was like this industrial sewing job. It was such a cool, it was a very great experience, but I ended up having this like weird, like pent up feeling about not being able to surf. Like it was just driving me insane. So I like went on this rogue trip to Florida, surfed a little bit, like traded surf lessons for t-shirts with this surf shop. And he was like, if you move down here, you can have a job. And like, there was just, I did all this little spontaneous stuff. And then actually my boss from New Zealand was like, you can surf on Lake Michigan. And I was like, no, you can't. He's like, yeah, you can. I like, whatever. His family is in the blueberry industry and they have farms in Michigan that they own. And he had been and surfed on Lake Michigan. I was like, whoa. So I Googled it just to get a board and they were hiring.
Okay.
And so I decided to have an interview and I was going to move over there, but just for the summer. And then I was going to go to Australia. So that was still kind of my plan. And I started working for Third Coast Surf Shop in May of 2016. So almost 4 years ago. And it was just the weirdest thing ever. It was awesome. It was such a great experience, but it was so like again, it was another shift in like my ego. And I think actually when I started surfing the lake was when I really felt surfing was like just it's a different thing. It's a different thing here. I had to totally relearn a lot of the fundamentals. I had focused so much on being a shortboarder in New Zealand and made that like a huge part of my identity as like I was like all these girls, they just longboard and they like there was this kind of I would say negative stereotype about like girls with pink longboards. It was kind of this like thing where they're like, yeah, and they're like, you know, they don't want to surf, they just want to hold the boards, and they, you know, are just trying to date the guys that like in our friend group that are surfer dudes, you know. And so I was very anti that. I had very like I didn't want that to be me. And when I came to the lake, it was kind of like, well, you're not going to surf that. You know, the board that I brought back from New Zealand, it was like, yeah, I still can't surf it on the lake. It's like 5'10". I'm sure like Larry or Frenchie or one of those guys that totally shred could easily surf it on the lake, but not me.
Happens if you try and surf it? It's just you're not catching the waves, or
it's just not buoyant enough for me. Like I need a little bit more buoyancy, and like in the ocean, like when I take and I'm surfing like an ocean wave, it's totally fine. I have no issues. I even tried like it was a thruster setup. Well, it was a 5-fin setup, but I was riding it as a thruster, and then I actually started riding it as a quad. So it's really fast. That kind of works on the lake, but it has to be like pretty good conditions and stuff. So I just feel like I'm kind of sitting too, like, I'm not buoyant enough to where I'm like used to riding it. Like, you know, I'd have to really put some time into trying to ride it. But yeah, so that's how I ended up here in the lakes. And then obviously what kept me here was Andre, my husband. So I met him here like basically the first week that I moved here. And he just, it's so crazy. Like he basically just he helped me move into my apartment and just never left. He just kind of stayed forever, and we got married like 5.5 or 6 months later. It was super crazy. Wow. It was very like, yeah, all of my friends in New Zealand were like, what are you like, is this fake? Like, this can't be real. I was 23 at the time when we got married. It's so crazy, but that was like, that's another kind of like facet of me now, is like me in my marriage. It's like weirdly one of the best things that's happened to me. It's another thing like almost with surfing that just holds me accountable. I feel like those two things together have kind of made me who I am, which is really cool and not what I was expecting at all. I never even thought I would get married. Like, which awesome. It's cool. And like, it's really great. So yeah, we ended up staying here and kind of going through the whole immigration process, and Andre didn't know how to surf. So of course I was like, my only like qualification for anybody is that like you have to surf or be open to learning how to surf. And so
otherwise they're not gonna work.
Well, yeah, because I just like, for me personally, I'm like, it's not sexy if you're like lounging on the beach and I'm shredding. Like, I want you to be out there with me, you know? And
it's like, let's get you to a shorter board than I have. Come on, quick.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, let's do this. And he didn't want a lesson. He's so stubborn. I love him. But he's like, I'm going to teach myself. And I remember being so annoyed because it took me so long to learn how to surf. And it's really stupid. But I was like, he just picked it up so fast. And he's still like picks up everything. He's just one of those people.
Some people are like that. Yeah.
He's just like, oh, I'll figure it out on my own. And I'm just, you know, I was annoyed, but you know, now it's awesome because there's not a huge difference between our skill levels, I don't think, which is nice. So
Yeah, and he's like, is he at the point where he's pushing you to improve, or you're both sort of on par with each other?
I would say that we're on par with each other. I
Mm-hmm.
think in the ocean, I'm definitely way more comfortable because
Mm,
that's where I definitely I know those waves. I surfed
mm,
ocean waves for like 3 years. And
mm-hmm.
so I feel very comfortable in the ocean. Where I think for him, he still like thinks about sharks a little bit. And like, it's still like you have to surf in almost what seems like a different spot on the wave. And I
Yeah.
think um
Mm,
and like a different takeoff zone than
yeah. Okay.
the
Yeah.
lake. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think like learning that takes some
Mm-hmm.
time. So yeah, like when I was in Uruguay, I thought that I would really just pick it up really quick. It had been probably a year since I had surfed any ocean waves, and I was just so like not like because you have so much more time. If you have a good wave period, you have so much more time on your hands to
Mm-hmm.
stand up. And I was kind of like, popping up inside the waves and stuff. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know what you mean a little bit, where you're sort of just like, oh, it's just a lot. Like I need to put so much effort into catching this.
Yeah.
Like it caught me. It just takes you. Whereas on the lakes,
Yeah.
you're struggling, like just giving it 1,000%.
Yeah.
And if you miss it, you're exhausted. Like usually
Exactly.
ocean, you miss it, you go for the next one. But I find on the lakes, I'm like, I'm done. I usually like paddle back and rest if I miss a wave.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they both have like their own beauty. Like I think actually learning on the lake, I don't think it's harder. I think there's actually more of a support system here to learn. I
Mm,
think as a community, it's amazing to see like just how positive everybody is
mm,
and how open and wanting to help people. So I think learning on the lakes is awesome.
mm.
Um, it's just different,
Yeah,
but
totally.
I do love it.
Mhm. Yeah, I just remember one day on Lake Ontario, it was big full moon, this purple sky in, I think it was October, just people kind of bobbing in the water. Waves were not super great, but it was just this magical experience. Like just, and you see the city skyline. I'm like, I can't believe this. This is just insane that we get to do this. I can't believe I found this community. And this girl's like, this is heaven. I'm like,
Yeah.
we can die now. Take me. I
No,
need to sacrifice
totally.
myself to Poseidon.
I No, there's something very special about it. I went out the other day on Friday and the waves were pretty freaking garbage, but my friend just wanted me to,
Mm,
take video and stuff for this piece that she's doing. And it was really cool because it was just me
mm,
and there was no one else. And it was very just kind of calm. And it's in Michigan City, you're surfing next to like a giant, like energy factory thing. And it's just very like this weird but also beautiful combination of like industrial hardcore like
mm,
factories on this right next to these beautiful dunes with this awesome
mm,
beach and all this stuff. It's just a very weird like dynamic,
mm,
but
mm,
I think it's cool. I mean, I like it.
mm. Yeah. Well, it's just you're getting this different angle of your city or your town. You're seeing it from this vantage point that, because I don't know, when I grew up, nobody was swimming in Lake Ontario.
Okay.
Now there's more people doing it, but it wasn't. I remember always dreaming that we would have a beach culture in Toronto, but we never did. So to be swimming in or in the water, I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. I didn't know we
Yeah.
could do this. Yeah. And how? So you started surfing on the lakes, and then how did you start the podcast? Like, how
Okay,
did
so the
that?
podcast was me I was going to work. I was driving in Chicago traffic. I used to work at the salon in Logan Square in Chicago and I was at a really weird point in my career, I would say, with hair. And I was just listening to Gary V, which is like that
Yeah.
entrepreneurial dude, which I like every once in a while to just listen to it and get myself like jacked.
That's
So
what
I was just like,
you made this fist, and that's exactly what I think
yeah, I'm
of him.
like,
Just
yeah, I'm
masculine
gonna
energy.
just
Yeah.
totally. And I love, like, I really do like, I definitely have a lot of feminine energy, 100%, but I definitely have always done kind of like, not, I don't know, like a little bit of like aggressive work, like working with a hammer and working in a car shop and working with like all this whatever. So,
Aggressive work with a hammer.
yeah, it is. Like, it can be it's, you know, you're pounding nails together. It's like, you know, a little bit like, and so yeah, I would listen to these podcasts when I drove or if I took the train, and this time I was like driving, and I remember he said like, I have this listener who has a Dragon Ball Z podcast, and he makes whatever $56,000 a year, and he has a great life, and he just loves what he does. So if you have a good idea, then you should start a podcast right now. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. And then I was just like, yeah, I surf on the lake, and that's pretty weird. And then, you know, weird waves. And I was just like, I remember coming home from work. I had just ordered this exact microphone actually, and Andre's parents were visiting us. And I came home and I was like, I'm starting a podcast. It's called the Weird Waves Podcast. I bought a microphone. And Andre was like, what? Because he was kind of like hanging out with his parents. And then like half hour later, he was like, okay, yeah, I just thought about it. And I think it's like awesome. I'm like, okay. So then, yeah, we just started it like that. And I think through the podcast, a lot of things happened, and have been happening and are happening. What's been really cool is, first of all, I just like talking to people, period, about anything all the time. I thrive listening to people's stories about literally anything. So I knew that when I was surfing, I just met so many interesting people that have done really incredible things. And I feel like most people that surf, especially people that surf like on the lake or on the river or something, like there's such a interesting mindset that you have to have in order to be like, I do this thing and everybody tells me that I can't do it, but I'm doing it anyways. And I just wanted people to hear that idea and the stories. And so yeah, I just started interviewing like anybody that would talk to me basically. and it got really like really cool really fast. So obviously my first interview was with Ryan Gerard, who's the owner of Third Coast Surf Shop, because he was my boss. And so he set aside time to talk to me. And then Surfer Dan, which was incredible conversation. That was my second one. And I had no idea what I was doing. We still are learning. We have no experience in doing this at all. So Andre is the one who edits all the audio. He taught himself all of that. And then I record and do the video editing and kind of decide what makes the cut. I would say like I do the intros and outros, obviously. And then and I'm usually the one that like reaches out to people like, oh, do you want to talk about something or whatever? So so yeah, that's how that got started. Super randomly, never expected it to be. We have like almost, I think, 500 followers on Instagram. We have yeah, each episode gets between 100 to 350 views like per episode. And then what happens is, that's really cool, is that when people find our podcast, they go back and listen to all the other episodes.
Yeah, right.
That's what we're finding. So everything, like, as we grow, everything grows, which is really cool.
That's cool. Yeah. You have like a good, what do they call, like user retention. So it's like people like get hooked. And so you just need like a few to to improve the lifetime value of your
Exactly.
customer. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, like, what we find is definitely the most popular, or some of the more popular episodes, are people that are either known by the Great Lakes surf community or are members of the Great Lakes surf community, because that's kind of how we started. But then as it grows, it just changes. You can kind of see like more people that are, surfing the rivers join and are watching. And, we have some more international people, lots of Brazilians, because I've interviewed, I think, 2 people now from Brazil, or that are originally from Brazil. But yeah, it's just so cool. Yeah. And we've so far made a conscious decision to not do advertising of any kind. The only thing we have is like through the app that we use, because there was basically no terms and conditions, and I use the app. And I think whenever anybody asks me how to start a podcast, I do tell them to use Anchor because it's so easy. So I can stand by my endorsement of them, because I do use them every day. So
totally, yeah.
that's
and
the
Anchor
only
sponsors you.
Yep. So it's like, I don't know. I think maybe the whole time we've made like $60 for like total. Maybe I'd have to check, but yeah, it's not a lot, but that's fine. I mean, it's cool. So we just take like, $60 that pays for my microphone, and but yeah, we've been approached by a couple different people, but we just ended up saying like, not right now. Like, we've had a couple of people that like wanted us to do an ad for them, and we were just like, just come on the podcast. Just like come on, because I think if people hear your story, then they want your product. If it's a good story, if you have a good story to tell. And we don't really need, I mean, obviously everybody needs money, but we don't really need money to keep this going. It kind of like,
it's a labor of love.
It's like a hobby.
Yeah.
It's a pretty, I would say it's a relatively inexpensive hobby, which is cool.
It's cool because it's sort of like Gary Vee inspired you to think about creating your own podcast by saying you can make $60,000 doing this.
Yeah.
And then in the end, you were like, well, 1,000 times less, but I love it and I want to do this for free because it's so much fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I think at the beginning, like the money, which is, I'm definitely a very money motivated person for sure, but I always want to do it on my own terms. So, I'm not saying no advertising ever, this will never make money. I'm just saying that, I'm not going to sign with somebody who has control over what I say. I'm never going to be that person that's like, oh, what are my sponsors going to think? That's never going to be the way that I do things ever. So it wouldn't make sense for me to change the whole like idea of the podcast, which is just open format, for me to make like, who even knows how much, $200. But I think at the time I really didn't like my job. And so that the money spoke to me kind of like, okay, like I see this opportunity, and then, doing the podcast actually inspired me to quit my job and work for myself. Okay. Because I just kind of realized that, if I kind of got, I would say that I got pretty complacent, which is not really like me. And when you work for yourself, there's a whole lot of pressure. And I work really good under pressure, so.
Totally, yeah. It's like, I always find like self-employment, if you're unhappy with your boss,
then you have a problem.
Then you know who you need to bitch to, which is yourself. So it's like you need to restructure things, within your systems. So it's like if I feel burnt out or tired or something's not working, I have to do an inventory on myself to figure out where it's broken. Whereas if you're an employee, I don't know if you have that much freedom. It's sort of, into the mercy of somebody else's decision making or structure or whatever. So, but it's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. And I think sometimes you definitely have to be in the right mindset to take it on. And I also think I think that some people are better off as employees and some people are better off as business owners. And I feel bad for people who think that they want to be a business owner, but actually
Mhm.
just need a good boss. You know,
Totally.
like they've never had a good boss and they think that they want to be self-employed. Then they get self-employed and they're like, shit, I can't really do this when they
Yeah.
really just need a good boss.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, and I can do both. I mean, when I'm an employee, I'm a good employee, but I just wanted to change things. You know, like if I feel like something's not working as an employee, I don't keep it a secret because I care
Mhm.
about whatever business I'm working with or, you know, anything that I'm working with. And so if you're making suggestions to someone who's open to suggestions, then
Mhm.
you're a perfect employee, someone who's loyal to the company, loyal to the brand,
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you are working for a boss that doesn't like suggestions, then you are trying to take over the company and stepping out of line and
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know,
it was like your virtues are going punished, right? Like,
yeah.
so if you're in a situation where you're being punished for good deeds, it
Hmm.
really causes moral injury. It causes you to just give up, to really resent the workplace, right?
Totally. Exactly.
So when did you get into hair? 'Cause was the job that you hated related to hair?
It was hair. Yes, it was hair.
Okay.
So I got into hair in a kind of weird way. I definitely did not fit in there. I still, meh, well, I'm learning and I have kind of learned where I fit in the hair world.
Mhm.
So I will say that Andre and I got married, and then so Andre works in trucking, and he was going to learn how to drive the truck. And I was like, kind of, I don't want to just sit at home while you're going to be gone for whatever months at a time. So I had gotten my hair cut, and actually, the lady who cut my hair taught at a beauty school. And I kind of was like, huh. I grew up around hairdressers. My whole dad's side of the family, like all my girl cousins are all hairdressers. That was one of my first jobs, working as a receptionist in the salon.
Mhm.
So I felt like really comfortable about it. And what I wanted was something um that was like kind of tangible,
Mhm.
like something that I could, like, if we move anywhere, I can cut hair on the beach for $10 or something, you know, like I just
Mhm.
wanted to have a skill. And
Mhm.
also I needed to have this like credential because you know, the reason why I couldn't stay in New Zealand was because I didn't have any skills written on paper. Like I had
Mhm.
skills and I had a great idea and a great business, but it wasn't anything like legit in terms of like on paper.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's where I started in school. I went to a very like how do I say this? My beauty school was like not in a good area. It was very like semi-professional, but it was cheap and it was right by my house.
Mhm.
And I could they taught working on hair of all types. It was very important to me. I never really understood why people um couldn't do certain types of hair or wouldn't do
Mhm.
certain types of hair. Now I think I have a better understanding of why that is. There's just a huge lack of information and like training. But
Mhm.
that was something that was very important to me. And so yeah, I went to this beauty school and kind of like, I don't want to say I half-assed it, but I was very like I wasn't getting from my teacher what I needed. Like I wanted this like, you know,
Mhm.
I got really excited about it and I wanted to be pushed and I wasn't being pushed. So I ended up going to this hair show. My first one, they do like hair conventions and all this stuff in Chicago. It's one of the biggest ones. And I was like an alien walking around there. On the first day I was like, I think I wore like, I don't know, jeans and like a surf t-shirt and like maybe put on some makeup, but
Mhm.
I was just really intimidated walking around there. Um,
Was
it
everyone like
was,
super coiffed, or what was
oh
the?
yeah, it's, well, okay, well, hairdressers are very flashy people, and I'm generalizing, but I would say that's pretty true.
Mm.
I mean, if you think of like a hairdresser, it's someone who's very outgoing, pretty fun, you know, it's
Mhm.
like a
Mhm.
fun job, quote unquote. And it's very like, I mean, it's about your looks.
Yeah.
That's the whole
Mhm.
thing, you know?
Mhm.
Like And I kind of like I would say in the beginning for sure, I definitely struggled with like how do I take this surfer in me who like I never cut my hair ever. I never was really like I wasn't really taking care of myself. I kind of liked that kind of free, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
like low key type of thing, and then take it to this like professional level. And I was walking around all these booths for half of the day, just a deer out of headlights. And this is almost everybody's experience the first time they go to the hair show, by the way. It wasn't just me for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um
Yeah, because boho is definitely a look. What's wrong with that? Yeah, you know.
yes,
And like what people come
exactly.
asking for, they're Googling images and
Totally.
references. So,
So yeah, I looked around at all these and the hair shows it's very like it's very in your face. So each brand, just to kind of give a visual, each brand has like a stage.
mm,
And on stage they're like they want to get your attention so that the brands, you know, like Redken and like Pureology, they all have their own booths. And there's like just the most ridiculous stuff ever, like half naked dancers dancing around, like this guy is doing this thing. It's just so intense. And it's very like it's very not me. And I was just like, why are like half naked dudes gonna sell this product? It does actually sell the product,
yeah.
okay? It does work. Like I'm not, you know, it does work, but I just didn't get it. So then I walked to this other past this other booth and there were these people, they were all dressed in black. Um, so they were all dressed the same, but they all looked different,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And I was like, this is cool. And they were doing classes, like free classes. And it was for the brand Redken. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. So I kind of felt um, this
mm,
kind of like intimidation factor went away.
mm,
And so I ended up just meeting a bunch of people. I did every single free class that was offered all 3 days of the conference. I literally just hung out at this booth the whole time. And then that's how I got started in my career outside of beauty school is through like just going to different salons around the Chicago area and mentoring other people that were like really high up in the Redken brand.
mm.
And that was the best thing I could have done ever. I mean, it was awesome. It was a really, really, really good experience for me. And I still like, I'm very loyal to that brand because of that. I use their color, I use their like training techniques and all of that stuff just because
Mm,
of they gave me so much at the beginning of my career for free.
mm,
It's
mm,
like so
mm.
cool.
It's like their
Um,
marketing strategy
it's a
worked
really
for
good
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it did work for me. It's a
It
very
wasn't the
good
flashy
marketing.
dancers, it was the
Yeah.
like connection that you were looking for.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so that was how I started
Mm,
getting into hair. And then it kind of evolved. It turned into like I know that there's women like me that are, you know, a little bit more relaxed that also have money. Like, you
mm,
know, I
mm,
was like
totally.
I felt like maybe they wouldn't want to go to a salon that has like techno music and everything's white and it's very like heels and da 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 da. Like, you
Mm,
know, maybe they wouldn't want to go there. Maybe they'd want to go to some other like chill
mm,
place. And that's where I found eventually after working at two other salons, the place that I'm at now. It's so cool. It's like in the woods. So when you go in, you're super
mm,
relaxed. When you're done, it's super relaxed. It's just very chill. It's professional. Everything's like
mm,
the quality is there, but it's just kind of more
It's
laid
earthier.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very earthy, totally.
It's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I totally love it. And then I would say about a year ago I really got into like the science of
Mm,
hair and hair products.
mm-hmm.
So that is something that's like my favorite part of hair is just teaching people because there's so many like misconceptions I'd say and misnomers about hair and hair care products and how do they work. And I feel like
Mm,
everybody has you know, kind of like that weird drawer in your bathroom that has all the products that you don't like, but you bought anyways because you thought that they were going to work like everybody.
yeah. Like exactly. You're like, oh my, yeah. What's the biggest misconception that like, what's the thing you wish you could just wipe everyone's brains clean of and inject with your knowledge?
I would say, and this is a very hot topic, but it's the sulfates and
Okay.
silicones
Mm-hmm.
like fiasco. So like the best and maybe the most important step is washing your hair. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't
Mm-hmm.
wash your hair properly or enough or with the right products, then you're not going to clean your hair properly. And that is a cause for a lot of issues. So like what was really trendy, and it's still kind of trendy, is this like conditioner only method of like only washing with these like conditioner products, which still have like a soaping agent in them, which is what a sulfate is, right? So a sulfate is what makes shampoo and body wash and all this stuff. It's like is a sudsing agent. So that is fine to have this like conditioner thing, but what they don't tell you is that you have to if you're using any other products, you have to use a clarifying shampoo once a week because it's not going to clean the products off of your hair. So then what ends up happening is you can actually get a fungus on your head from product buildup. So then you start getting, so there's like a huge, there's a big lawsuit right now against Diva Curl. I'm not sure if you heard of that. If you look into that, it's pretty interesting. It does seem like a two-part issue, so they like changed their formula. But also, they weren't properly instructing people how to use their products. And so because of that, people developed this fungus, which is really bad. If you talk to a dermatologist about it, it causes like, it looks like dandruff, it causes hair loss, it can cause like huge issues, and it takes a really long time to get back to normal. So
you're referring to like seborrheic dermatitis, the like causes like greasy dandruff, like build-up.
Yep. And yeah, the fungus, I forgot the name of the fungus, but it's like a specific whatever. But yeah, your head is itchy, and then so you're getting hair loss from the fungus, but you're also getting hair loss because you're itching in the night and you don't really even know that you're doing it. And so yeah, all of the like also sulfate-free shampoos still have they have a sulfite. It's not a sulfate. And it's like a cocoa whatever sulfate. So it's it's from a coconut. And I think that there is a huge misconception that that is like better for the environment because it's from a coconut, and that's just not true. Because the manufacturing process is still a chemical, like unless you're literally like only doing the apple cider vinegar method or the like, there's no poo methods. You're putting a chemical on your head. Like, so you should get what's going to work for you. And like sulfate-free shampoos are great for people who wash their hair every day, use products that don't have silicone in them, are used in conjunction with sulfate-free products. Because a sulfate-free shampoo is not going to break down a silicone that's in like a sulfate line that has those products inside. So yeah, I would say hair washing. It's like, and like it is good to like, I wash my hair probably every 3 days or every other day, just depending on what I'm doing. But I need sulfates. I try to do no sulfates. I need them, and I need silicones. It's what works for me. It's what works for my hair. And so I think just the simplest thing.
It's like also without the soaping agents or sudsing agents, you have to use so much more, right? Like the natural shampoos, you're using buckets of it to get stuff broken down.
Yeah, and the thing is like you don't actually need to have a full like, big soapy lather to have your hair be clean and your scalp. But there's just small things like also with washing your hair, like everyone's like, I'm just so greasy right here. And then it's like, oh, can you just show me how you wash your hair? And they're like, well, I do this and I put the shampoo right here. And it's like, okay, well, you're over cleaning this spot. And then the back of your head is not getting, so there's less oil back here because you're not, you're not spreading it around. So if you like, it actually takes a couple of weeks for your oils to like balance out if you start doing this. But if you put the shampoo in your hands, lather it in between your hands like this, and start in the back and then go to the front, you'll notice that your hair will look less greasy because you're not over cleaning all the
you get like the rebound oil production because your hair is trying to like rebalance. Because
because go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Yeah.
Well, your oil, the like your and I know that you know this, but your body is constantly, especially your hair, skin, and nails, especially your scalp, is constantly trying to balance your pH on a constant basis. So if you are overwashing with shampoo and then also not putting conditioner on your scalp, your body is creating the oil to lower that pH to get it back to a normal level. So shampoo goes with conditioner. Shampoo blasts your pH up to like 9 or 10. Conditioner lowers it back down to a 4.5 to 5.5, which is where your skin lives and your hair lives. So if you're only using shampoo and not using conditioner, then your hair is going to get greasier faster and you're going to end up using more product over time.
So. You should be putting conditioner on your scalp then, not just on the end.
Yeah. Right. But only lightly, and again, this is like controversial, I guess, in the beauty community or whatever. But it's just science. I mean, it's the science of pH. So if you have really long hair like you and I, what I like to do is I'll shampoo my head, blah blah blah, rinse everything out, and I'll put mainly focusing on my ends, and then I'll take my hair and kind of put that like conditioner water on top. So you don't have to slap a ton of conditioner, but like you need that it's more basic formula to take your hair pH back down to a normal level. And then you'll start seeing your hair being less greasy and you can go more days in between shampooing and all that.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna start that today.
Yeah,
I would just be on the ends because but
your ends are dry, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's where you feel.
Right.
And with surfing,
yes,
obviously salt water has not been, and the sun has been a mess for my hair. But when I started surfing on the lakes, it was unbelievable how bad it made my hair. Yeah. Even after the surf session I had on Friday, I came out of had my wetsuit on. Yeah. I had this giant knot in the back of my hair, and I had a meeting, and I'm like trying to work through this knot with my fingers while talking. So, what are your recommendations for surfer girls to protect them?
If you have if you have longer hair, the best thing to do is 2 braids and then tuck, especially if you're wearing a hood. And then I'll either tuck whatever's less annoying. I'll either tuck both of my braids here, or I'll literally put them like behind both shoulders.
Like inside the neck of the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. So what it is so it's the more points of contact or like pressure points you have, the less stress it's going to be on your hair. So like if you put your hair in a ponytail back here, you might not have any knots, but you're going to start developing traction alopecia along the side of your head. If you have 2 loose braids, your hair's not going to get tangled, but also what it's doing the whole time is it's moving like this. It's not super tight. It's nothing like, crazy, but it's going to stop you from, having to use a brush to get all the shit out of your hair, all the sticks and everything.
And random like seaweed pieces, mermaid
hair. Yeah, and like also, so the lake, it really depends on like the time of year and also the like where you're at, but it depends on like what kind of minerals are in the lake. But there's a lot of like different mineral deposits that are in the lake that aren't in the ocean, that can cause your hair to feel like, man, when I come out, my hair feels like a stick. Like you can't brush through it. You can't like whatever it is. So if you're having that problem, I would recommend either like before you go out, either using a spray conditioner, like on your ends and then braiding it, or even if it's a real problem, then using like, there's a couple of products that you can shampoo out. So you put them on and then you shampoo them out, or you can use like a deep conditioner. But what that does is it creates a seal on the outside of your hair. So it kind of protects the moisture and it doesn't allow anything to get in. If you're not surfing with a hood, it only works for like, an hour. Right. If you're surfing with a hood, it's gonna be like miles better. But if you're not surfing with a hood, it only is gonna last for so long. But the barrier, it just kind of stops all the minerals from coming into your hair. And then, yeah, it just depends on how much you're surfing. But I would always say before even shampooing like your hair after you're done with a session, you might not even have to wash it to get that feeling of like, you know, nice soft hair back. If you have like, yeah, if you have like a big tangle or something, there's a really good chance that you should just rinse your hair for like 2 to 3 minutes under the shower, and it'll start to kind of like untangle itself. Because it's just those minerals making your hair feel like straw. Like it just feels, and it's not gonna do anything that you want because it's like,
yeah, like you know, rubbing, I guess, or like,
it's yeah. And also to detangle, like if you start going in hardcore back here, like you're making it worse. You're actually pushing the knot worse. So it's always best to start at the ends and work your way up to detangle and kind of like, you know, break apart the section. Just try to make it smaller. And then that way you're not going like like ripping out your, you know? Yeah.
Okay, so. This is good. This is interesting. Because, yeah, I know in was I was on like the swim team, we would condition our hair and then put it in the cap.
Yeah.
And it would just kind of keep all the chlorine from really getting into the hair shaft and really causing damage.
Yeah.
And that worked. That was pretty good. Except one girl was hardcore and her hair was just like a straw.
Oh gosh,
like
yeah.
A bale.
Chlorine is just so bad for your hair. Oh
man. But
yeah.
And, what was my question? So what about hair loss? Like we started talking about hair loss last time. And you know, people are probably coming in, a lot of clients with questions about it. And what do you typically tell them, or what do you normally see?
Well, it's important for me to start off by saying I'm legally not allowed to diagnose anybody or say I think it could be X, Y, or Z, because that kind of goes into the territory of diagnosing, and I don't have a license to diagnose anybody. But the thing that's interesting about hairdressers that's definitely, I would say, underutilized or under talked about is the fact that we can see changes happening, and we can see them happening very quickly. So if you have a mole, if you develop like, you know, whatever, that's something that we can see. Hair loss, what I've seen, which is really interesting, and I have no scientific basis. I'm not diagnosing anybody, but what I've seen is a huge amount of people under the age of 30 that are getting what looks like pre-menopausal hair loss. And all of them that I've asked started birth control at a very young age. So I'm seeing a very big, you know, there's something that's going on with hormones, and your hair obviously has a huge deal, but causing like the hair loss in these, there's definitely this little, I can actually show you on myself because I have a little bit of it. So these little areas here, so
the M pattern, we call it M pattern hair loss.
So, or we usually call it like hormone hairs, and you know, if you've recently changed whatever, any type of hormones, any type of medication that affects your hormones, you will either see like a huge loss, or then you start to see them grow back. That's one thing that I see with hair loss. Another thing that I see is when hairs are growing back. So I can kind of see to people like, oh, did you like, you know, maybe 4 to 6 months ago, did you have like a big surgery, or did you have like whatever? And they'll, you know, most of the time they say like, oh yeah, or I like quit this stressful job or something. I'm like, yeah, because they're like, why is something wrong? And I'm like, no, but you have a bunch of baby hairs coming back. And that's why you're thinking that your hair is frizzy, when really it's just hair growing back, which is awesome, you know? So
like resolving your iron status. I always see that. Like the halo of little hairs.
And people think that it's like frizz, you know, because it starts to kind of stick out and like, oh, my hair's so staticky. It's like, no, like I'm not giving you products for that, because we're gonna leave those alone. Those need to grow, you know. But yeah, I would say those that that's pretty common. I think that most women with long hair also think that they're losing more hairs than they are. So I would just say to kind of keep an eye on your own like drain you know?
Yeah,
Like
right.
so just like if you feel like you're having some sort of, I don't know, you're going through some change also is to just trust your instincts because you know how much hair you typically lose, most people. You know how much hair comes out in a brush. You know how much hair, whatever. And about a year and a half ago, I went through some serious hair loss. Now it's kind of coming back. But what was so frustrating to me is that everybody, every hairdresser that I went to, and I was a hairdresser, they were like, "You're crazy. Your hair's not falling out."
Right.
It's like, I don't know if they're telling their clients that because they want to make them feel better, you know, or they want them to not stress out because people kept telling me like, "Oh, if you stop stressing out about it, then your hair will grow back." Well,
right. Unless the stress is caused by
yeah,
something. It's not your hair.
exactly. It's like, okay, well, that's not really like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that's not very good advice. But I would just say like, trust your hairdresser if they ask you any questions, and you need to find somebody who's willing to tell you when something's wrong. And a good hairdresser, in my opinion, will have a dermatologist to refer you to. So that was one of the things when I went out on my own out here is I found a local dermatologist that I was willing to refer clients to. And we kind of had this relationship where I just knew that I liked the way that she worked. She took me seriously. She didn't think like, oh, you're just a hairdresser, because that happens too, because I don't have like a, you know, like a 4-year degree. It's a technical certificate type of thing, you know, license. Sometimes people don't take you seriously, but a good dermatologist or a doctor will take you seriously. And then that's kind of where I, you know, like, this is getting serious, whatever. And sometimes it's just damage. But damage hair loss or damage breakage, it looks different than like
Right. You
regular.
can see that the hair is sort of like terminated at a certain point rather than it's like coming out the scalp. Yeah, like we'll have specific questions, right? Like some people will, like, it's obviously a super emotional topic and it's really tough to treat hair loss.
Oh yeah.
Because there's a long turnaround. So even if you're resolving things at the root, it takes a few months, like you said, for things to come back, like 4 to 6 months, 3 to 6 months. So it's hard to be able to navigate. So to figure out, are we on the right track or do we need to change course and figure out other routes? And it's super stressful, like for women, like our hair. And but we'll ask questions like, is your ponytail smaller? And also, what does your hairdresser say? Because that's somebody that's checking in on your scalp on a regular basis. And so if my patient comments, my hairdresser noticed that I have, because women typically, even if you're getting the M pattern hair loss, your hair is just generally thinner, but there aren't necessarily bald patches. Right. So it looks like you're fine. So people are like, what are you talking about? Your hair is super thick. You have a lot of hair. And you're like, but half of it's gone. So you're often not taken seriously. Yeah, that's a common thing, but it's a very distressing symptom that people deal with.
Well, it is. And the endocrine system is your body's way of telling you like something's up. Something's going on. So whether your nails are getting brittle or your skin is extra dry or you're getting eczema or anything, it's a response from your body saying like, hey, you know, something and it could just be stress. It could, you know, be this or that, or it could, you know, it could be something more serious. And I think what's cool about the time that we're living in now is that I think that there's a huge shift to listen to your body and kind of like listen to what it's saying, you know, like there are certain things that will cause you to lose hair, and even though it's worrying, it's not worrisome, if that makes sense. So you shouldn't be like stressed about it. So like if you've recently had surgery, like there is hair loss associated with going under anesthesia, even just you know, whatever general anesthesia. If you recently lost a bunch of weight, there's a huge hair loss that happens with losing weight. It doesn't mean that your diet is wrong or that you're doing it in the wrong way. It just means like there's so much hormones stored in your body fat that the release of hormones and the release of all that stuff causes your body to freak out. And so all of that stuff can be regulated over time without medicine, you know, without any of that stuff. But I also think that there's a misunderstanding about what can actually help hair to grow. So like oils are probably going to make it worse. Like I don't recommend anybody use coconut oil or castor oil or any of those types of oils because they have almost no scientific backing.
Even castor oil, you would say?
I would say even
Mm-hmm.
castor oil because it's so thick that when you like
Mm-hmm.
maybe if you diluted it with something else it could be okay. I've heard of people using like
Almond.
diluting it with sweet almond oil or something.
Mm-hmm. But it, you,
Oh,
because it's causing more traction.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, people are like rubbing it and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at those baby hairs that you have, they're so
Mm-hmm.
fragile,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then also your shampoo is going to like again, it goes back to the cleaning. So there's a really good chance that like a normal shampoo, even a maybe even like a clarifying shampoo, which is just really harsh shampoo to take minerals and stuff, can't break down a castor oil. So then it's
Okay.
again like
Right.
that, like cleansing
Mm-hmm.
aspect
Mm-hmm.
of your hair, and I
Mm.
do think that there's some, whatever it's called, placebo effect,
Right. Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
that has something to do with that. But like, there's only two medical prescriptions that are clinically proven over a long period of time to help support hair. And one is philoxane, which is Rogaine,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is like something prednisone or
Right.
something.
That would be more for like the autoimmune alopecia.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
an oral pill. So you
Mm-hmm.
take that as a pill. The other is a topical treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, obviously the pill is going to be way more extreme. I
Mm-hmm.
personally I don't know. I feel like the side effects from the pill are to be weighed heavily,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the minoxidil, Rogaine, any of those,
Mm-hmm.
there's tons of brands that have that.
Mm-hmm.
The side effects are very low. It's
Mm-hmm.
just you have to understand that as soon as you start it, you're a lifer.
Right. Mm-hmm. And there's one side effect where it can cause hair growth in other areas.
Yes, that's true. Especially, yeah, that's right for
Mm-hmm.
women. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've never, like, I personally tell people to wait like a
Mm-hmm.
year,
Mm-hmm.
which seems like such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like if you're going through something and you're not seeing any change in a year, well,
Mm-hmm.
then there's a really good chance that if you're ready to try something like that, that you can kind of move forward. But also, like,
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to hear this, but like a wig, if you're seriously having issues, there's a lot of options for people like a wig. The
Mm-hmm.
wigs now are amazing and they're not
Mm-hmm.
expensive and it's very trendy right now to have a wig. You
Mm-hmm.
can still get it styled, you can still, go to your
Mm-hmm.
hairdresser. I've cut wigs for people, like that's a great choice. Also extensions, there's tons of really good extension options if you like. And what happens a lot actually with extensions is
Mm-hmm.
that people start getting extensions, their hair starts growing back.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
stop looking at the mirror like, oh my
Yeah.
God, and my hairline, oh my God, it's so thin, and their hair starts growing back.
It's one
You
of these
know?
paradoxes we see with like infertility, with weight loss, with acne, where as soon as
Yeah,
you adopt, then all of a sudden you're pregnant with your biological kids. And so yeah, it's something I think so when your doctor's saying, well, just or your hairdresser saying like take your mind off it and your hair will grow back. There's some truth to that as long as the root has been resolved. If you obsess,
exactly.
that stress
Yeah,
can
I
cause,
would.
yeah, aggravate the problem. But I mean, it is a little bit of a blow off to be like, oh, just calm down and you're fine. You have to feel like
Yeah,
you're actually
it's of
resolving
course.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like with anything, it's always with the delivery, right? So
Hmm.
it's like, how
Yeah,
do you
right.
deliver that, right? Like, if you're like,
Hmm.
let's just slap some extensions in there and call it a day, it's like,
Yeah,
well,
right. Yeah, exactly. And
so
so the last question I have is I know you have some projects about hair and surfing in the
yeah.
works or in motion, and can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's been funny because of everything that's happening with the kind of
Mhm.
the close down of the world.
Yeah.
I've kind of shifted a little bit to making some like at home type of videos. So like how to do your root touch up at home and how to get
Mm,
your hairdresser to give you your formula and like how to cut your own bangs and stuff
cool.
because yeah, I've seen a little bit of hairdressers saying like don't you dare cut your own bangs and like don't box dye your hair, which I in a way I see where they're coming from, but I also think like there is something so important about the way that you look on the outside that has to do with what you look like, how you feel on the inside. And
Hmm.
it's something that I say that I didn't appreciate until I started having so many clients.
Hmm.
And it really does affect how you feel in your day to day. So, I've kind of started making videos like that, but I also have some specifics on like products for kind of surfers and surfer girls and stuff, things that are a little bit more, maybe not environmentally friendly because, like I said, sometimes something that seems environmentally friendly, the process to getting that ingredient is just not environmentally friendly. So I like to focus on things that are made in the USA because that's where I live. If it's made in the USA, it's produced here, it's shipped here, it's less like carbon footprint, and it's better. I know exactly what is in the product, and there are certain standards for those products. So, kind of just like talking, I have videos talking about that, talking about sulfates and sulfites and all of these different things. And also how to, just kind of like what we were talking about, how do you prep your hair for a cold water surf or a warm water surf? How do I protect it in that way? So, yeah, I don't want to say never, but I didn't have the idea until I posted in the Surfistas community. It was maybe on your post. I don't know. It was someone's.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was on your post. And then, I got so many comments and private messages from people like, nothing to do with surfing, only about hair. And I think like once you open up the conversation, then you kind of find that people have a lot of questions,
Totally. Well, and it was funny, right? I think I asked that question being like, I know we're supposed to be hardcore, but how do you guys get the algae out of your hair?
Yeah, but we are.
Guys. Yeah.
But the thing is it's still hardcore. Like it's hardcore to go out in freezing temperatures and then come home and still want to have your hair look normal, like it's still, all of it is hardcore. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm bad. So I take my braids out, rinse out my leave-in conditioner, and I'm good to go. Yeah,
exactly. It's just about knowing that.
Where can we find you? Where can we find that channel? Is that a YouTube channel?
It's a YouTube channel. Yes, it hasn't officially launched yet. It should be by next week. It's called Wave Babe Hair on YouTube, and then it is the same as my Instagram handle, which is Wave Babe Hair. People can feel free to send me a message of any kind. I have so much time on my hands. So I would love to help anybody with any questions or anything like that. Yeah.
And what about, do you take proposals for the Weird Waves podcast? Like, can people reach out to you and hey, Taylor, interview me? I got some cool stories.
Yes, definitely. I'm definitely into self-promotion from other people. I like, it's a cool thing, if you feel like you have a cool story and you want to share it, then definitely reach out to us. That's, you can email us, weirdwavespodcast@gmail.com, or you can just send us a Facebook message or Instagram message, or any way is awesome. Everything's Weird Wave Podcast. And yeah,
hair, which is a cool name. I love it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I forgot what it was before. It was something really silly, but then I kind of like, I think as I've gotten into this, I want to be fun but still like professional. So yeah.
All right, Taylor. Yeah. So thanks for chatting.
Yeah, this was so fun. So yeah, I'll just you can let me know whatever you want to do with this, or what you want me to do with this, or
I think you should upload it, because even if Larry interviews you, it'll be a different spin. Yeah. So I think it's cool because you're talking about hair, your story a little bit, but like let him also interview and ask his questions. But I think it was good. It was really cool. It was really interesting because
I think
people want to know like the history behind it, because probably your story infiltrates into other interviews, but to really like share the whole thing, it was good. It was really good.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's cool. Yeah, I'll listen to it, and yeah, I think we can post it too. We can both post it.
Yeah, I'll post it. Yeah, I'll post it in my groups because people want to know about hair, and that was really useful, especially with the castor oil, which is something I recommend to everyone. Which I was happy with that.
Well, I think like I would say there's some like small studies that do show like results in that. I would just say if you still want to recommend it to people, to just cut it down with sweet almond oil. It just makes it a little bit more viscous, but the actives or whatever in castor oil that make it, helpful or help to regrow is at least not because it's so thick if you just get straight up castor oil,
Yeah. Yeah, it feels
And
awful to rub it on. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sweet almond oil it's a little bit, softer too. So
yeah, Okay, this is awesome. So I'm gonna go walk my dog.
Yeah, sounds good.
This
sounds
was
good.
great. Yeah, and so keep in touch. Yeah, I think you should just put it up.
And that was episode 40. It's kind of strange to be on the other side of things and being interviewed. Hopefully it makes me a better interviewer. But I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you are doing well during this quarantine time and that you are enjoying your extra time with your family and loved ones. Andre and I have been painting and packing up stuff, getting ready to head to Florida. Super excited about this next chapter for us. So we will see you next week with a new episode. We will have a guest. I will have my life together next week. I promise, guys. Thank you so much for always being a part of this and all of your positive feedback. We really appreciate it, guys. And we'll see you next Monday with another episode.